introduce to you our State Representative Marisa Marquez.
Thank you so much to the Paso Young Democrats, to their leadership, their executive committee for the invitation to be here and to speak with you about some great things that are going on in your state, and not only in your state, but within your delegation here in El Paso. And so I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and of course I will go briefly through just some important points that I want you to know about in this past session, and then I'll open it to questions, because I think that's where where legislating really begins, is in these conversations with our communities and understanding the needs and the particular priorities that we need to put in place before we go into the next session. I am your state representative. I've been your state representative since 2008. I was fortunate and privileged enough to be elected in 2008, and then I was sworn in 2009. Since then, we had a great opportunity to pass some very important legislation. Very important legislation not only to El Paso, but statewide and also to the border area. I always tell this story, and I tell it now more now that I see my colleagues in Austin. I say, if I see another piece of legislation that says 50 miles within an international border, I'm going to scream. Because the needs on the border are needs across the state of Texas. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. The needs are, I know that are unique here on the border, but they're relevant in other parts of the state. Namely the Colonia legislation. People have been very critical of my Colonia legislation, saying that it's not needed or it's not necessary. And also, did you know that until 2009, when Senator Shapley and I passed that legislation, there were no standards here on the border area. And so we expanded. Somebody was saying yes, somebody was co-signing? Okay. So there was no legislation here on this border area. Because of courageous leaders here at the local level, we were able to pass that legislation. And many people thought, well, why? There's not colonias in any other parts of the state. Absolutely. Did you know that the first county to adopt that legislation was Travis County in Austin? Probably somewhere where we don't think colonias exist, but they do. Unincorporated areas are statewide, and substandard housing exists across the state. And so finally, with the passage of that legislation brought to us by our own county government, who are strong leaders here, it made a statewide impact. That was successful legislation that was extremely important. Not only here, but El Paso led the way. El Paso, your 5 state legislators and senators led the way on such important legislation. The second thing that we can be very proud of and we're leading the way on is the Ethics Commission. I remember 3-4 years ago, you all saw it in the news, that certain indictments and arrests were being made for local elected officials. It was embarrassing. I went to the University of Notre Dame. I have colleagues and friends and alumni all over the state and all over the U.S. And one of my friends, my old roommate, called me from Chicago. She says, hey, El Paso's in the news. They made it all the way up here in the Windy City. And I said, oh my gosh, what happened? That you guys have all this corruption going on, that these people are being arrested at this local level, and that made me sad. That my friend in Chicago was talking about what was going on here locally, and it wasn't something to be proud of. And so, working with our county government, we saw a need and we addressed it. There were many, many people that were in opposition of such great ethics legislation, of creating a commission that would oversee and have some kind of teeth in it to administer fines and penalties. We didn't have that. We didn't have that before this. And I'm very happy and I'm very proud to have authored that legislation and passed it, despite so many odds, to make it, to ensure that the El Paso County, that the elected officials that were a part of this process were restoring trust to the community. That was extremely important. Many of us can turn around and say, that's not us, it's not me, I do my thing, I file my campaign finance reports, I report my monies, but that person, we are responsible for one another. We are responsible for restoring public trust in our community. And so that was an important piece of legislation that I was very proud to author and I was very proud to be a part of. Something else that you all should know about your state delegation is that we are the most improved in recent history. We really are. We've come out in different articles across the state about how we haven't agreed on every issue, But we've absolutely made every effort to get along and to make sure that we're having open, transparent, and productive conversations about what's best for our community. We represent different districts, we understand that the needs are different, but we're having those conversations in a very productive way. You should be very proud of that. Also, for the first time in recent history, is that we're actually interacting with our local governments. State government, for a very long time, your state elected officials were isolated, only a part of the process 6 months every 2 years. That's not happening anymore. I created a legislative task force just recently to have 3 meetings this year to prepare for the upcoming session with our school board trustees. Many of them were in attendance. We're actually giving them a seat at the table with people that are going to make decisions about best practices. Why is that important? That's a part of the process in fighting corruption. It's not just us legislating and mandating certain things. It's having a conversation about what are the best tools that we can equip you with here on the ground. And that's exactly what our duties are. We have our county judge here. I have city reps that I'm so grateful to call friends and also that are supporters of mine. This past session, we passed legislation for the county. We've been strong advocates for county government. You know, under the leadership of our county judge, Veronica, who has been very involved at the state level, making sure that your needs here are taken care of at that level, has come up to testify, is actively involved with the Texas Association of Counties. We're putting ourselves on the map. El Paso is on the map, and in the most positive way. For the city, we also passed the Montecillo Management District. Again, collaborating with our local governmental entities to support them at the state. No longer is it's something that's distracting, or let's handle it, or let's just do minimal things that we can. No, we're actively involved in progressing their agendas here at the local level. So I'm so grateful to have y'all support, y'all support. I'm so grateful for the opportunity that you all have given me as your elected official these past 4 years. It's so important, and I want to continue doing more for El Paso. I want to continue my work on equality issues. I want to continue my work on colonias issues. I want to continue my efforts on ethics commission, and I can't do that, number one, without you. Number two, without the community involvement in organizations such as the El Paso Young Democrats and the El Paso Democratic Party. Change is here. Change is coming. Let's embrace it. Sometimes it's painful, but it's important that we maintain that conversation. Let's not get mad at each other. Let's have different perspectives and different points of views, but let's move the ball forward. Remember what our goal is. And so, again, I'm very grateful. I'm very privileged to be here, and I will open it up to questions. Thank you.
Representing the Congressman.
Yeah.
Do we have questions?
Yeah, I don't need it. And it's always the same question. Representative Marquez, this is a partisan organization. You are seeking the Democratic Party's nomination. So I have a question related to the Democratic Party. You have received a substantial amount of contributions from the Texans for Lawsuit Reform, which is a predominantly Republican organization. You also voted in favor of a bill that was considered anti-union. My question to you is, that being known, why should Democrats support you in the primary?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you brought this question up because I think it's important that we clarify the record right now. We went back, I know that there has been some criticisms about my support from the Texans for Lawsuit Reform. And we went back and we looked at our finance reports from 2008 on. And so in that money that we've raised, TMR contributed 18%. So that's not significant. 80%, more than 80% has come from our local donors, have come from other organizations in Austin and lobby groups, have come from a myriad of supporters. And so I think it's very important that we clarify that. We did go back, we ran the numbers, and it is 18% since I've been elected and since I ran, even as a candidate. Okay, not even since I was elected, but even as a candidate, it made up 18%. So I would not call that significant. Now we're going on to the legislation about the energy vote. There have been several pieces of legislation that have come down from that specific group, many of which I voted against, and that was the loser pays, and that was an emergency item by Governor Perry, and I voted against that. And energy the bill, actually what it did was it would overturn a Supreme Court decision to allow somebody to be their own general contractor. I studied all the points on the bill as I understood it. I heard from both sides, and I made the best decision for this community. And so I stand by that decision. But to tie those two together, I think is an unfair assessment.
How are you?
Hi, Alexis, how are you?
Good. I have a question. It has to do with your district maybe?
Yes.
One of the maps that came out, not the final one, but one of the maps that came out that you supported, although it kept Moody in his original district, made it very much so Republican. And I just wanted to know why you supported a district that was removing a Democrat from the delegation.
Well, actually, it wasn't. And so you're talking about the map that we actually, the delegation signed on to. Okay, let me explain to you the process of that. And I'm glad that my county judge is here because she was also part of that redistricting process and understanding exactly what was going on. You have to understand that this district was 50-50. Moody has one in that district, a Democrat has one in that district, and a Republican has one in that district. That is a swing district. My goal was to ensure that District 77 maintained a strong Democratic representation, okay? And yes, I was in those conversations back and forth with Representative Marquez because I wasn't going to leave or waive my right at a table to have a discussion about how important it was. The legislative intent was never to move Moody into my district. That's important. The legislative intent is extremely important. That's what they're debating at Washington, and that's what they were debating in the San Antonio courts. We never did, but we had to make up for growth. You have to understand, Alexis, I was down 30,000 people. Representative Gonzalez was down 30,000 people. Representative Margot was up 2,000, Chente was up 60,000, and Pickett was down about 4,000 or 5,000. So what does that mean? What does that say about the growth? The growth is outside. We needed to make up 30,000 in order to maintain 5 seats. And I will tell you this, it's important that this goes on the record, is that our intent and our priority was to maintain 5 seats. We needed 5 House seats. We needed to make up population so that we could maintain those seats. But my priority has and always will be to maintain District 77 as a strong Democratic. I could not go anywhere else. I had to work within my confines. We could not go into New Mexico. We cannot go into Juarez. Do you know what I mean? And we were already pressed up against Representative Gonzalez. She was also in those meetings. Everybody in our delegation signed off on that because we understood what we were working up against. But my priority has been and will always be to maintain District 77 as a Democratic stronghold.
Woo! Thank you.
Absolutely.
We also have a candidate for Judge Del Mullen. Any other questions?
In 2009, El Paso sent an all delegation a Democratic delegation to Austin for the first time. Do you think it's important that we send another all Democratic delegation to Austin in 2013?
I support Joe. I've always supported Joe Moody. I do support Joe Moody, and yes, I think it's absolutely important that we have more Democrats in the State House.
Woo!
Representative Marquez, in the budget that was passed in the last session, all the Democrats of the delegation voted against that. The only member of the El Paso delegation to vote in favor of the budget, which represented huge cuts to education and several other negative factors.
Healthcare, women's health. Yes.
Right, was Representative Margot. Why was it important for you to vote against that budget?
It was extremely important because, first of all, you have to understand the dynamics of the House. We were 101 Republicans to 49 Democrats. Essentially, they didn't need us to show up to even conduct business. But what we wanted to do, what our fight was to put every one of those cuts on the record. Every one of those cuts to family planning, because the argument became not women's health and preventative medicine, it became abortion. Number 2, schools. Oh, the local taxpayer to the more affluent school districts, they were willing to go up a few cents. But we still weren't maintaining our obligation at the state for public education. There were several issues. The other thing is that we had emergency items put on by the governor. I didn't appreciate being a part of a national campaign platform and using my house seat to be a part of these discussions for emergency items when we had a $27 billion deficit. And I think what was important that we put into the record, and the most important during this session, is that this no new taxes, no burden on the taxpayers was disingenuous. And I want to commend our county judge who took a stand during session, and we all supported her because we were with her on this, is that it was disingenuous for the Republicans to say that there were going to be no new taxes. Where were we going to shift the burden? Where's our county hospital going to receive its funding when the state cuts its funding? Where's our school districts going to receive funding? On the local taxpayer. I've owned a home since 2004, and I had the pleasure of opening my tax bill at the end of January and seeing how much we paid to the school districts and to our county hospitals, and that was going to go up if the state did not meet its obligations. And so that's why I voted against it. And the other thing is that all this rhetoric and all this talk, there were no talks about solutions. We cut women's funding. We're forfeiting now $9 to every dollar we spend on women's health care because there's a 1% out there that wants to make the conversation about pro-choice, pro-life. I mean, that is hard. That's hard. Many of the women on the border in the area, in this area, already don't have insurance. Planned Parenthood was their only place to go. And so those were reasons, those were probably my strongest reasons, particularly women's health issues, that, I mean, I could not in any good conscience vote for that bill. Absolutely not.
We also have former State Representative Norma Chavez as well in attendance. Any other questions?
I want to,
Representative Marquez,
yes.
You have a very long history of supporting gay issues and supporting gay rights at the state level. In light of that, however, we wanted to ask you about House Bill 1951. I don't expect you to remember the number, but it was the bill that dealt with the regulation of the Texas Department of Insurance and related programs. There was an amendment that was proposed by Alonso, it was amendment number 24. That dealt with making it illegal for insurance companies to discriminate against people on the basis of sexual orientation. And that amendment failed, and you also voted against it. And I ask you to explain why.
Actually, that was 1951 was the bill on...
Texas Department of Insurance.
Was it the Sunset Bill?
Right.
Was it the Sunset Bill? Okay. The reason why is because I didn't feel that necessarily an amendment to this needs to be a state law. I have signed on to legislation with Roberto Alonso that he has filed that bill over and over, and he's taken the lead on that and making it state law. To piecemeal something so important, to try to stick in amendments, this needs to be something bigger than an amendment. This needs to be a state law for equality. And for making sure that all Texans, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, are taken care of. This is not something we can piecemeal or we can put together in 5 seconds or those types of things. I believe in that amendment. I voted against it because it's not something that we need to take care of at that level. We need to take care of it at the state level. We need to pass a bill to ensure that there's no dispute on how it's interpreted.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I could see. Any questions before we close it up? No?
I thank you, everyone, for your patience. I know we started a little bit late. I thank you for your attendance. I'm very grateful to everyone that showed up. The best of luck to all the candidates that are out there. I know that you all are out there strong. I do want to thank you again for showing up, for being involved. Please don't hesitate to contact our office. That's one more thing I want to let you all know that we are extremely proud of. We do the best constituent work in El Paso County. I mean, we put in over 1,300 hours on 138 cases at the state. And that goes from helping someone with financial aid to navigating through health and human services. And we take great pride in that we answer every letter that comes into our office, and I sign every letter that comes out of there. because I need to know exactly what's going on in my community. I made that commitment to you in 2008. I stand strong here today, and I'm proud to say I have fulfilled my commitment and will continue to do so. Thank you.